WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station.
All right, 215-204-9449 is our number. This is the main event. Zach Gelb, Chase Sr. here with you on this beautiful Wednesday. It is Hump Day. And let's go out to the phone lines right now. We talked some Philadelphia Eagles and Penn State in segments 1 and 2. Now it's time to turn the page and get to the Temple Owls. And our next guest, he was outstanding with the Temple University Owls. He had 346 rushing attempts and put up 1,866 yards with 15 touchdowns in 1986, and he finished second in the Heisman Trophy voting right behind Miami's quarterback Vinny Testaverde. And that's the one and only Paul Palmer. Paul, it's Zach Gelb and Chase Sr. Thank you for joining us, and how are you on this beautiful Wednesday?
I am wonderful, and I appreciate you guys having me on here.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, and we were talking to you yesterday right before the interview, and you told me something that I was just in complete awe about, and that was, and you're a guy that finished second in the Heisman Trophy race. You were a first-round draft pick. You had a plethora of success playing football through Temple and the NFL, and you told me that when we were talking about Bruce Arians, that he was the only coach to actually give you a Division I scholarship. First off, how the heck did that happen, and how was your relationship with Bruce Arians?
You know what? I think what had happened was they'd actually come down and they were looking at my best friend who ended up going to West Virginia and also playing in the NFL. And they happened to notice me. Bruce got his job late. I think he was only 32 years old. My position coach was 26. And he was just hustling, just trying to get speed. They looked at me. They liked me. I came for my visit. He said, son, we just want a verbal commitment. I said, Coach, I have no place else to go. Can we sign it right now, then pull it out on the national signing date? So it was a match made in heaven. I have a lot of respect for Coach. I think the world of him. And to a certain extent, you know, you can say he saved my life because, honestly, I really had no other school to go to. I was a little small, and my grades were kind of shaky, so you can't blame the other schools. But Bruce had the vision, and Bruce was smart enough to think, well, you know, we'll hang in there with this kid, maybe send him to a junior college if we have to, and we'll see what we have in a couple of years. But thank God for both of us, it worked out pretty well.
What do you remember from that 86 season when you finished second in the Heisman Trophy? Because I covered the Heisman last year, and that's just one of the most intense moments when you have all those players sitting there and they're waiting for their name to be called.
What I remember most is just having a feeling like this is impossible. Like throughout the season, I averaged, I think, 170 yards a game. And I remember thinking to myself, there's nowhere in the world that I'm going to be able to keep up this pace. It's ridiculous. It just won't happen. I think the closest guy to me averaged about 125 that year. And then the night of the Heisman, the strange thing is we never had any national televised games. And Boz was there, and DJ Dozier was there, and Testaverde was there from those schools, those people. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't have a chance. And all year long I just told myself, just play because you really don't have a chance. And the moment before they announced it, they said the winner of the 19 blah, blah, blah Heisman Trophy is, and for a moment I took a deep breath. And then when they said Vinny Testaverde, immediately I felt really disappointed. And some people, I mean, if you can ever find it, you may find pictures of me with my eyes rolling back in my head like, oh, my God, are you kidding me? But I never thought about it until that moment. And then when the moment came and left, I felt I was disappointed. So it was a pretty incredible moment. It was a pretty incredible year, you know, in 86.
Paul, it's Chase Sr. The last time I had talked to you was inside the Temple Television studios, and Temple was set to take on Fordham. And me and you talked about the game for a little bit, and you said that your son had played at Fordham. And after the Rams went out there and beat Temple on Lincoln Financial Field turf, you guys got a little bit of father-son clash going on right now?
Well, you know what? Let me tell you, I wanted to beat the kid to death.
Show him who's boss in that household.
Right. My son Robert decided to text me during the game. And he was texting stuff like, what are you going to do now? How do you like that? You know, stuff like that. So I ended up turning my phone off, believe it or not, which I should have had already, but it was on vibrate. And he was harassing me during the game, and we finally talked about it afterwards. And I had to eat the humble pie. They beat us. And when you go out there and you get beat by people, you can't be boastful or what have you. Just eat the humble pie and give them credit. And Fordham played well.
Yeah, that last second touchdown from Nieberg to Ajala doesn't help the cause either. It probably makes that loss a little bit more sour for you. But as Temple heads into the weekend, they go to take on Idaho. That team is historically bad, and it's really important and vital for Temple to go out there and have an impressive showing. What are you looking for Temple to do from start to finish on both sides of the ball? Because that offense has to find a rhythm, and that defense has to not bend as much as they're breaking right now.
I think Idaho is exactly what we need at this point. We've kind of slipped and slid a little bit, and we haven't quite gotten traction like we should have, especially on the offensive end. I think offensively, what needs to happen is we need more explosion. Someone has to step up, and someone needs to be explosive for us. Be it a wide receiver, be it a running back. It could very possibly be Williams. He could do it, but there's no explosion on the offense. Explosion on the offense. Excuse me. On the defense just has to stop people sooner. It's great that we get to the red zone and we stop people, but the problem is they get close enough to where they can still kick field goals and they're still getting points. So if the defense can tighten up a little bit in the middle of the field and not in the red zone, that should be fine. Now, as far as the kicking game is concerned, Jim Cooper's a good kicker, and I know a lot of people may not feel that way from what they've seen. Jim Cooper's a good kicker. Jim Cooper is a kid that in Sports Illustrated, he's one of the faces in the crowd, and Temple never gets kids like that. He's a very good kicker. I watch him at practice. He kicks the ball over the net, and he hits the apartments across the street. The people across the street are looking out their window at him. He's a really good kicker. He gets a lot of good lifts on the ball, and for whatever reason, he's not hitting the ball well. So if Jim or any of the kickers can get on track, and Temple can get a little more explosion, and hopefully they can get their rhythm this week, and the defense can get more stops in the middle of the field as opposed to the red zone. For the rest of the year, not just this weekend, but for the rest of the year, I think we'll do pretty well.
Paul Palmer joins us right now. He's a color analyst for the team. You can hear Temple, Idaho on 97.5 The Fanatic this weekend, Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, along with the great Harry Donahue, who was on our show last week. Main event, Zach Gelb, Chase Sr. here with you. And Paul, this offense right now, the running backs, they look very impressive so far with the 1-1A punch of Kenny Harper and Zaire Williams. And Connor Riley's been tough as nails so far, and that was evident in that Fordham game when he played through a very bad leg injury. But when they get inside the 20s, it looks like this offense is just completely different and they aren't finishing. With your expertise on the offensive side of the ball, what needs to change with this team when they get inside the 20s?
I think when you get in situations where you're inside the 20-yard line, there has to be a decision that we are going to score, not that we're hoping to score. You know, you don't. And a lot of people criticize the kickers, and for myself, I criticize the offense. If the offense would just score touchdowns, then you wouldn't have to rely on a freshman kicker or any kicker to give you 3 points. When you're down close enough like that, you have to score. And somewhere along the line, Temple's offense has to make the decision that we're not going to be denied in this situation, because it's happened for 3 weeks. It happened with Fordham, and we were bigger, stronger, faster than Fordham, and for whatever reason, we got down there, we didn't get it done. And someone has to make the decision when we get in close, we're going to score touchdowns and not just get 3 points. We're going to score touchdowns. If we do that, you know, the rest of the season will open up for us, but we have to be a lot more efficient in the red zone.
Paul, when I look at this offensive unit, I see a couple of pretty solid weapons. You got Connor Riley, who's shown he can drop back. He's got a strong arm. When he's given time, he's pretty accurate, and he makes pretty good decisions. You have Jalen Fitzpatrick and Ryan Alderman, the two experienced wide receivers, and a guy like Nate Hairston, the redshirt freshman. He's shown that he's got pretty good hands and good route running ability. Then you have a solid backfield in Zaire Williams and Kenny Harper, but I like Chris Coyer at tight end too, but do you think that Marcus Satterfield and Coach Rule really aren't putting those offensive weapons in the best position possible to exceed at their top level?
I believe we have very capable talent, very, very capable talent. I wish Coyer would be a bigger part, and this is just me, not even being an analyst. This is just me being a Temple fan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know what he can do when he gets his hands on the ball. He's shown that in the past. And now he's a big body. He probably has the best hands on the team. I think with all the other pieces, and if we can get the ball to him a little more, that would open things up deep. That would open things up for the running backs as well. And it would keep the defense a little more loose. You know, right now, since no one has really stepped up, the defenses are they're just coming at us.
Yeah, they know it's coming.
They know it's coming. They're coming at us. The receivers have struggled a bit catching the ball. So at this point, No one is really worried about that. And like I said, Williams and Harper are a good 1-2 punch, but they just need some explosiveness, and we haven't gotten that. As far as our quarterback is concerned, he's played well. He's played extremely well. There were a few balls where if he had thrown the ball with a little more touch, he may have had touchdowns. And he's had a lot of balls that have dropped, and if you include the balls that have been dropped, the amount of yardage that we didn't get in the percentage of balls that we didn't get caught, I mean, he would be having an extremely well season, I believe. So we have the pieces intact. I'd love to see Corey get the ball a little more, though.
This game is set up for Temple to win. When I look at it and evaluate these two teams, I understand Temple's 0-3, but they were competitive in that first half up against Notre Dame, up against Houston. That game went down to the wire, and Fordham, it shouldn't have been competitive, but losing your star quarterback and then implementing him late in the game, that was still a down-to-the-wire kind of game. But you see Matt Rule go out there this week, and this is a offense of Idaho that only puts up 215 passing yards per game and 138 yards on the ground. Then he makes a lot of changes. He puts in Dvorak, Ioannidis as well. What message does that send to the other players on the defensive side of the ball when they're putting in some new players as you start off the year 0-3?
If you get to the point where you're starting to put new players in, you could very well be planning on next season. Especially if you get an exodus of the older players going out and a bunch of younger players playing, that could be a sign of, well, you know what, we got to start getting these kids. We got to get their feet wet, and we have to get them on the field. And we have to start preparing for next year. Or if they don't start bringing in the young kids, and they keep the older guys in, but they're rotating a whole bunch of different older guys. They're scrambling. They're trying to find the right connection. They're trying to find the right group to try to get some things clicking. I was in Dallas in '89, and we were 1-15. And honest to God, we had different people in the huddle every week. Every week it was a different tight end. It was a different guard. I came in, and all of a sudden Herschel was going the very next week. I was there. And we were scrambling. We were 1-15. So if you're seeing a whole bunch of different people, older people playing, they're just scrambling trying to get something that will be, at least more productive. You see the younger guys, it's almost like they've thrown in the talent, decided, like, we got to get these younger guys ready for the next few years.
Now, from your playing days when you have a lot of players being subbed in and subbed out and a couple of guys being benched and inserted into the lineup, does that hurt the communication and camaraderie between the team, or is it more as if we got a game to play, let's take care of business on the field, and that's all we can think of?
From an individual standpoint, if you're one of the guys that gets to the bench or gets substituted for, it's hurtful. It's hurtful. It'd be just like if anyone lost a job anywhere else. It's hurtful, and it becomes a problem for you. As the team is concerned, a lot of times you have a pretty good idea of your teammates. You have a pretty good idea. A lot of times when someone gets released, it's kind of justifiable in most cases, not all cases. A lot of times within the team, there's guys that are playing, and 90% of the team thinks that the guy behind him is better. And sometimes you get a substitute, and you're like, okay, well, good. I'm glad the coaches finally saw this. And other times you're like, what are they thinking? Why do they keep playing the same guy when the guy behind him is so much better? So it's like 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. It could go either way. But the coaches are going to do it. The coaches are there to win games. They don't want to lose their jobs. They have to do something. And if the guys that are on the field are not getting it done, regardless of who you are, you can be taken out and someone else can be put in just as well. I mean, I started as a freshman by the third game of my freshman year. And at the start of camp, I was probably sixth string. So it happens. It happens. It happens. It absolutely happens.
Final one here on the way out as we're talking to Paul Palmer, former Temple University back, now does the games on the radio with Harry Donahue. And, Paul, this is the homecoming game from Idaho, and you usually know as a former player in this league, when you're picked as homecoming, you're supposed to just go out there and you don't really respect the other team and you should beat them. Can Matt Rule maybe use this as a little bit of motivation, saying let's ruin their homecoming coming up on Saturday?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you said that. Because I had noticed that myself. I thought to myself, wow, like Temple's their homecoming game? Of all the people on their schedule and of all their home games, they decided that Temple's going to be their homecoming game. I'd be pretty PO'd by that myself. I'd be absolutely PO'd by that myself. So I'm sure it'll be mentioned, and I'm sure it'll be mentioned quite often. And I'm sure if we get on top and we start rolling on the sideline, it'll be mentioned amongst the ball players about ruining their homecoming.
Well, Paul, you were absolutely fantastic today. We really appreciate a few minutes, and let's definitely get you on again real soon, and we'll see you out at the link coming up for that Louisville game, and have a great call coming up against Idaho.
I will. One last thing.
Yes.
Man, you guys are good. You guys can talk. You guys can talk, man. You guys are good, man. I'm proud of you guys.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Paul. We really appreciate it. Paul Palmer right there.